Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. And this is how it all fell apart with just one sentence. The door had just closed, still swinging slightly. Her perfume hung in the air like it was mocking me. She said she had a date. Just like that. No stammer, no shame. She even smiled. Not a cruel smile, worse. A casual one. Like she was telling me she'd be home late from yoga. I hadn't moved from the kitchen. My fork was still hovering over my plate, the food untouched. Somewhere behind me, the ice maker dumped another tray like the house hadn't just cracked open. She didn't ask me how I felt about it. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask anything at all. Because in her mind, this wasn't betrayal. This was her freedom. The minute the door clicked shut, I stood up so fast my chair scraped back like a scream. My body moved before my brain could catch up. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't thinking about love. I was thinking one thing. This cannot be real. But it was. Her phone had dinged twice on the counter. She forgot it. And for someone who just told her husband she was going on a date, she sure had a lot of notifications from a guy named Griff. I picked it up. First message. Can't wait to finally have you all to myself tonight, fire. Second message. Wear that black dress I like. Don't bring your ring this time. I stood there holding her phone like it was made of fire. My hands were shaking, but not from rage. From clarity. Because for once, I saw her. Not the woman I married. Not the woman who curled up against me when she was cold. Not the woman who said she wanted a golden retriever and a fixer-upper. No, this was someone else entirely. And I was done begging to be noticed. So I left. Not the house. Not yet. I left her in my heart. Right then, I just let go. Quietly. And then, I did something I never thought I'd have the strength to do. I texted Griff back. But I didn't send what you think. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't even say who I was. I sent him one single sentence that shattered her entire fantasy life before she even reached the car. The message I sent to Griff was short. Not cruel. Not angry. Just devastatingly precise. She told me she's yours now. Keep her. I put her phone down on the kitchen counter and walked away like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I didn't want to see if he replied. I didn't care if he did. What mattered was what would happen when she saw it. When she returned and found her carefully curated secret blown wide open without a single scream or confrontation. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't need to. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the dining table in complete silence. No TV. No phone. Just the tick of the wall clock and the slow creep of something cold and final settling in my chest. For hours, I imagined the scene in her car when she realized she didn't have her phone. Did she smile, thinking it was a simple inconvenience? Did she laugh when Griff showed her his phone and said, "Your husband's texting me"? Or did her heart drop the way mine did? At exactly 11:43 p.m., the front door burst open. She rushed in like a storm, heels in one hand, mascara smudged, breath short and chaotic. She saw me sitting there like I'd been carved into the chair. And then she saw the phone, still glowing faintly with the screen open to the message I sent. Her eyes locked on it. She froze. And in that moment, I watched her world tilt. Her face didn't crumble, not yet. First came the disbelief, the scramble for a lie, the reflexive shift into manipulation mode. "Cal," she said, voice trembling. I can explain." I didn't answer. She stepped closer. I didn't mean for it to be anything serious. It was just. I finally looked up at her. Not like a wounded husband. Not like a man begging for scraps of truth. I looked at her the way you look at a stranger who knocked on the wrong door. "I didn't ask for an explanation," I said calmly. "I asked for nothing. And that's exactly what I expect now." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You're not even going to let me talk?" "I let you talk when you said you had a date," I said. "That was the last time you had the floor." For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she didn't have a comeback. No defense. Just silence and the realization that whatever power she thought she had, it was gone. And then, her voice broke. "You were never supposed to know. It didn't mean anything." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You wore perfume for someone who meant nothing?" She sat down across from me like her legs had failed her. "What happens now?" I took a deep breath and finally stood up. My voice didn't shake anymore. My knees didn't feel weak. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "That depends on how honest you want to be when you answer one question." Her throat tightened. "What question?" I leaned in slowly and whispered, How long has it been, Griff? Her eyes widened, and then everything in her expression collapsed, like a house with rotted beams. But the truly shocking part wasn't that she confessed. It was how she confessed, and what else she admitted to when the truth finally came flooding out. She didn't answer right away. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out except a shallow breath and this blinking, wide-eyed panic that said everything before she did. That silence, that hesitation, it was worse than any confession. I just stood there waiting, watching her crumble in real time. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she finally said, like that would soften what was coming. Then how was it supposed to be? I asked, voice low and tired. Was I supposed to just sit here and applaud your bravery for going behind my back? She broke eye contact. That's when I knew I was about to get the real version, the one no wife wants to tell, and no husband ever wants to hear. It's been almost 6 months, she whispered, as if lowering her voice could somehow dilute the damage. At first it was just drinks. Talking. I thought I needed someone to remind me I was still desirable, still exciting. I didn't move. I just stared at her like she was a complete stranger. But then it got deeper, she continued. We started meeting more. He made me feel like I hadn't felt in years. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to walk out into the night and disappear. But all I could do was nod slowly. My jaw tightened. So you used our home as a pit stop between his arms? She stood up suddenly, arms out like she was trying to justify the unjustifiable. You stopped noticing me, Calvin. You got comfortable. You never touched me unless I asked. You never even looked up from your damn blueprints. There it was. The shift. The moment when the cheater turns it into your fault. I felt it coming like a train from a mile away, but it still hit with the same cruelty. You're blaming me for this? I asked, stunned. You're blaming my stability? My loyalty? My quiet, boring love? She didn't answer, just stood there trembling, mascara streaking, looking like the victim in her own disaster. And then I made a mistake, or at least, it felt like one at the time. I asked her if he loved her. She froze. That question landed harder than anything else. I didn't expect an answer. I thought she'd dodge it, lie, maybe even laugh at how dramatic it sounded. But she looked at me, eyes hollow, and said, he told me he does. That was it. That was the blow I hadn't braced for. He told her he loved her. In 6 months. While I spent 12 years building a life brick by emotional brick. He said the words I reserved for anniversaries, for nights spent dancing in our kitchen, for the woman I thought I'd die beside. I sat back down because my legs gave up. She walked to the window, chewing on her thumbnail like she was waiting for the world to end. And then, after a full minute of silence, she turned to me and said something I still don't fully understand. I came back because I thought maybe you'd say something to stop me. I laughed quietly, not out of humor, out of shock. I did, I said. I told your affair partner to keep you. That broke her. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the couch like the words themselves were heavy enough to crush her spine. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt numb. But even in that moment, I didn't know the full story. Because what she revealed next wasn't about Griff. It wasn't even about me. It was about something else, something buried. And when she said it, I realized I hadn't just lost my wife to another man. I had lost her long before that. She was still curled on the couch like the cushions might protect her from the truth. I was standing now, pacing slowly because I didn't know what to do with my hands or my head or the silence that was spreading like fog between us. And then, without even lifting her eyes, she said something that pulled the rug out from under everything I thought this night was about. I was going to leave you before Griff. The words just sat there. Heavy, cold, almost casual in delivery, like she was checking an item off a list. I stopped pacing. My heart didn't race. It stalled. What? I said, almost too quietly. She finally looked up. Her face was blank, but her eyes, they had guilt baked into every glance. Before him, months before, I'd already been planning it. I didn't respond. I was trying to hold on to the floor beneath me, the walls around me, the ceiling above. Because in that moment, I felt like everything was spinning and falling at once. I had a bag packed in the back of my car, she continued. For weeks, I'd leave the house, circle the block, park down the street, and just sit there, trying to decide if I'd do it. She paused, then shook her head. You were always too kind, too predictable. It made it hard to hate you. I laughed bitterly. I'm sorry I didn't scream at you, or make your life miserable enough to justify leaving. That's not what I meant, she snapped, then immediately softened. It's just, I needed to feel something. I needed to know I was still alive. And then Griff, he made everything so easy. There it was again, the shift, the self-justification wrapped in emotional buzzwords. Needed to feel alive. Like I was deaf. Like loving her every day wasn't enough because I didn't make her feel like she was on fire. So you were just waiting for a reason, I muttered. Waiting for someone to give you permission. She nodded, slowly, like she hated herself for agreeing with the truth. I sat back down and stared at the coffee table between us like it might burst into flames. There were years etched into the scratches on that wood. Game nights, birthday candles, nights she cried, and I just held her. That table saw more real love than she apparently felt in our entire marriage. And then she said something that caught me completely off guard. I wish you cheated first. I blinked. Excuse me. She shrugged. It would have made this easier. Cleaner. Then I could have left and felt justified. You wanted me to betray you so you wouldn't feel bad about betraying me? She nodded. I wanted a villain. You never gave me one. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. That was the moment I realized she hadn't just been planning to leave. She'd been quietly writing a story where I was the cold one, the distant one, the mistake. So when she finally walked out, she could say it was survival, not selfishness. And I never gave her that ending. So she rewrote the plot and made herself the main character, the misunderstood woman seeking passion in a gray world of predictability. But here's what she didn't realize. She wasn't the only one who changed the story. I stood up again and said something I didn't even know I'd been holding in until it came out. You don't need a villain. You need a mirror. She froze. And then, I left. Just walked out the door without shoes, without keys, without a jacket. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I needed to be anywhere but there. I walked through the night until the sky started to change color. But what I returned to the next day, and what she left behind in my absence, was something I never saw coming. I came back just after sunrise. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that feels post-apocalyptic, like the whole world hit pause while I wandered through the night, trying to convince myself I still existed outside of her. My feet ached, my shirt clung to me with sweat and regret, and my mind kept circling the same thought. Maybe she'd be gone when I got back. Maybe she'd finally done it, vanished the way she had planned for months. And part of me wanted that. A clean slate. No confrontation. Just silence and space. But when I opened the door, the house didn't feel empty. It felt staged. There was a note on the kitchen table. Not handwritten, typed. Printed on the same paper we used for tax returns and grocery lists. The kind of detail that made it feel sterile, rehearsed, too prepared. Next to it sat her wedding ring. Not in a box, not even laid flat. Just standing upright, like she wanted it to look theatrical. A performance for an audience of one. I stared at it for a long time before I touched anything. The paper was folded neatly in thirds. When I finally opened it, the first line didn't start with, "I'm sorry," or "This isn't your fault." It started with, "I didn't think you'd ever really walk away." The letter went on for 2 pages. She admitted to more than I expected. Griff wasn't the first, just the most recent. There had been 2 others, both during times when I thought we were doing okay. She said she didn't know why she kept doing it, but that with each one, she felt more in control. She used that phrase 3 times. More in control. As if tearing apart the most stable thing in her life gave her some kind of high. But the part that wrecked me, the part one read 3 times to be sure I wasn't hallucinating, was when she said she thought I knew. That somewhere deep down, she assumed I had figured it out and chosen to ignore it because I was too afraid of starting over. She thought my silence all these years was weakness, that I would always forgive, always wait, always stay. She closed the letter with this. If you just fought for me harder, maybe I wouldn't have needed to feel wanted somewhere else. That line hit like a punch to the throat. Because it wasn't just manipulative, it was her final attempt to rewrite the story one more time. Even in her exit, she needed to believe I had failed her first. I folded the letter, slid it back under the ring, and walked into the living room. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the space she used to take up. My mind was racing, but my body was still. All I could hear was the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the ceiling fan above me. And then I noticed something else, her laptop. Still open. Still logged in. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to become the kind of man who dug through digital wreckage looking for more pain. But something told me I hadn't seen the worst of it yet. And I was right. Because when I opened her messages, I didn't find more from Griff. I found a conversation with someone I knew. Someone we knew. When I clicked open the chat, I didn't recognize the contact name right away. It was saved as just initials, TS. Nothing suspicious on the surface. But the moment I opened the thread and saw the profile picture, something in my gut twisted so violently I thought I might throw up. It was Thomas, my cousin, my closest friend growing up. He was the best man at our wedding. The guy I called when I locked my keys in the truck or needed help moving a fridge. He had even stayed in our guest room for a few weeks 3 summers ago when his apartment flooded. Meredith brought him coffee in the mornings. I thought nothing of it at the time. I scrolled. The messages weren't long, but they didn't need to be. There were enough. Wish we could go back to those nights on the porch. He doesn't even notice when you're glowing. Don't worry, I'll never say a word. Our secret. I stopped breathing somewhere around the 3rd message. My hands were shaking, and I could feel my heart thudding like it wanted out of my chest. I'd prepared myself for her lies. I'd even wrapped my head around the idea of her sleeping with some stranger. But Thomas? That was nuclear. That wasn't just betrayal. It was a fracture in the foundation of my entire life. And the worst part? These messages weren't from months ago. They were from last week. After Griff. After the letter. After the emotional wreckage she'd already caused, she had still been messaging Thomas. Still flirting. Still using pieces of my world like playthings she thought I'd never notice. I remember standing up so fast the chair nearly toppled. My vision blurred. My fists clenched, not because I wanted to hit anything. I just needed to feel something through the fog. I left the laptop open. Walked into the bedroom. Her perfume was still on the pillows. That same scent she wore the night she said, "Don't wait up." And suddenly, I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a breakdown. This wasn't one mistake snowballing into another. This was her now. She had become someone I didn't recognize, someone who got off on sneaking around corners, collecting attention, wielding secrecy like a weapon. And all I had been was the fallback. The safe place. The fool who kept refilling the tank while she took the car joyriding with strangers and liars. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for a long time. And then, I took out my phone. I didn't text her. I didn't text Griff. I texted Thomas. Just 5 words. You and I are done. No explanation. No drama. Just closure. Cold and final. Within minutes, he replied. Cal, wait. It's not like that. I didn't even read the rest. I blocked him, deleted the thread, and felt a weird kind of silence settle in my chest. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because 2 hours later, Meredith returned. She must have forgotten something. Maybe she didn't expect me to be home. Maybe she didn't realize I'd found the messages. But the moment our eyes met, I didn't say a word. I just handed her the laptop. And what she did next wasn't denial. It wasn't rage. It was something far more disturbing. When I handed her the laptop, I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Her eyes scanned the screen, and within seconds, she knew exactly what I'd seen. Her expression didn't shift the way I expected. There was no gasping, no hand over her mouth, no begging or scrambling for excuses. She just slowly closed the laptop, set it down on the kitchen counter, and looked up at me with this hollow, faint smile. That smile. It will haunt me forever, not because it was evil, but because it was so painfully calm. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. Like she was finally free from keeping her story straight. For a second, I felt like I was in the presence of a stranger wearing my wife's face. She crossed her arms and leaned back against the counter. So I guess now you know everything. I didn't respond. I was still trying to process the fact that she wasn't crying. Wasn't even pretending to regret it. She tilted her head slightly, like she was studying me, like I was the strange one for not understanding her logic. I never wanted to hurt you, Calvin, she said. But I'm not sorry you found out. You needed to. I needed to. I finally managed to say, my voice dry, cracking. I needed to find out that my wife slept with my cousin. She didn't flinch. No, you needed to wake up. You've been sleepwalking through this marriage for years. I nearly laughed, but it came out more like a cough. That's what you're going with. That this is all because I didn't chase you around like some desperate teenager? You don't see it, she replied, as if I were the one disconnected from reality. You gave me stability. I gave you chaos. That was our balance. But you stopped showing up for the chaos. You wanted things neat and quiet. I wanted to feel like I mattered. I walked to the window because I couldn't look at her anymore. I was afraid of what I might say, afraid of what I might scream. But more than anything, I was afraid I'd say something weak, that I'd beg, that some small part of me still wanted her back. I would have forgiven Griff, I said after a long pause. It would have taken time, but I might have found a way. But Thomas? You chose someone who knew me, someone who pretended to love both of us. She nodded slowly, arms still crossed. I didn't plan that one. It just happened. The phrase echoed in my ears like an alarm. It just happened, like a fender bender, like an accident on a rainy night. And then she said something I didn't expect, not because it shocked me, but because of how sincere it sounded. I was jealous of you, she whispered. You always knew who you were. You always had purpose. I was floating, and hurting you made me feel like I had control again. That was the moment I realized she wasn't trying to win me back. She wasn't trying to patch things up. She wanted me to understand her, to validate her destruction, to be the final witness to her unraveling and agree that it all made sense. But it didn't. Not to me. Not even close. So I grabbed my keys and said nothing. She called after me, her voice softer now. Where are you going? I stopped in the doorway. To buy a lock, I said. One you won't have a key to. And then I left. But that wasn't the last time I saw her. Not by a long shot. Because what happened the next morning, when I opened the front door and found what she left on the porch, changed everything. The next morning, I opened the front door expecting cold air and quiet. What I didn't expect was a small box on the porch and a yellow envelope taped to the top. No return address. No name. Just my name, written in the handwriting I knew too well. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at it. I didn't want to bring it inside. I didn't want her words inside my home again. But I also didn't want to leave it there like some open wound. So I picked it up, walked to the back deck, and sat down in the chair I hadn't used since fall. The letter was different from the last one. Shorter, less theatrical. There was no justification, no excuses. Just this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know you were never the problem. I didn't leave because of you. I left because I didn't know how to stay where I was loved and still feel like I mattered. I hope one day that doesn't sound like an insult. I hope one day you love someone who doesn't need to be rescued to love you back. Inside the box was a single photo of us, from our second year together, taken by a stranger on the coast. We looked so genuinely happy in it that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I set it aside, not to keep, just to acknowledge it. Then I stood up, walked inside, and finally did what I'd been avoiding for too long. I made a plan. It wasn't a grand revenge. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a fresh tattoo, a plane ticket, or some loud declaration to the world that I was better now. It was simple. I made an appointment with a therapist. I called a contractor buddy about converting the guest room into a creative workspace. I boxed up everything that belonged to her, not in anger, but in truth. I wanted it out because I needed space for something better, for me. And months later, I realized something wild. I was happy, not instantly, not magically, but truly, quietly happy. I'd stopped waking up dreading the silence. I started enjoying the sound of my own voice again, even if it cracked when I laughed. I reconnected with old friends. I even let someone new into my life. Someone patient. Someone kind. And when I told her the story of Meredith, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just smiled and said, it made me who I am now. So, yeah, it took betrayal to break me. But it took healing to build something better. And if you're sitting in the middle of your own storm right now, just know this, you're not broken. You're in progress. And progress, my friend, is beautiful.